Senator Blumenthal, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
What are your personal recollections of President Carter?
I remember the first time that I met him, I think it was at the Department of Justice, when he appointed me as United States Attorney, the Chief Federal Prosecutor for Connecticut. And I think he expressed how really close he felt to Connecticut, having been stationed there as a young naval officer and then coming back as a nuclear submarine engineer. And we may have shared some anecdotes, but he came across as someone with extraordinary humanity and humility, really a down-to-earth decency, big smile, good sense of humor, no pretension, even though, of course, he was President of the United States, most powerful man in the world.
He stood behind that Groton sub base, which has faced closures numerous times. Tell me about that.
When there was a threat to close the sub base and move it to his home state of Georgia, all of the submarines could have been transferred down to Georgia. Great economic impact to Connecticut. And he stood up for Connecticut. He opposed the BRAC Commission plan to close the sub base, saying it was against readiness and preparedness of the Navy. And that was kind of typical Carter, putting good government ahead of politics, personal politics, and self-interest. And some would have said maybe that was his failing as a politician. He tried to do the right thing.
One of his successes during his presidency, the Camp David Accords, eventually winning the Nobel Peace Prize, negotiating peace between Egypt and Israel. Are there lessons in diplomacy that could be learned from that, or have times changed as such and the Middle East has changed as such that there aren't any?
I think there is a lesson. Persistence and perseverance pay off. They are necessary for effective diplomacy, particularly in an area like the Middle East, where the conflict seems so intractable and insoluble sometimes. But Jimmy Carter was nothing if not persistent and persevering. And he knew intellectually it was possible, so he overcame the emotional resistance on both sides, and he simply stayed with it over those 13 days at Camp David, brought together the two sides. And of course, Egypt and Israel have been at peace since then, and it has been the fulcrum of much of our Middle East policy. And hopefully the same kind of persistence and perseverance could produce results now.
And speaking of perseverance, once he left the Oval Office, there was no giving up on community service, working for the American people in his post-presidential life. How much of an example, how influential has he been to other politicians once they leave not only the White House, but even any kind of political position, to what their next chapter is?
He epitomized the adage that there's no limit to the amount of good you can do if you don't care who gets the credit for it. And his involvement in Habitat for Humanity epitomized his approach, which was always give back. We should always be grateful for what we have in this great country. And I think he provided a lesson to other people in elected and non-elected office that you don't have to be in office to do a lot of good in this world. He used his popularity and his prestige as a platform to inspire others. And I think that's a lesson as well, that he led by example, and we all can talk the talk, but at the end of the day, we need to walk the walk.
All right, quite a life.
An extraordinary life
Extraordinary.
when you think about it.
Yeah, Senator Blumenthal, thank you so much.
Thank you.